This is the Foodies Reviewing Movies podcast. Each week, a couple of my friends and I get together and talk about two topics near and dear to our hearts and stomachs: food and movies. Each episode, we want to give you a taste of not only some of the interesting dishes we were able to indulge in and would like to recommend, but also the movies we had a ton of fun watching. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome to the Foodies Reviewing Movies podcast. I'm your host, Callie. Today I have two guests that I'm so excited to have here because they both really love the movie that we're going to be talking about. We have James from the 13th Floor podcast. James, hey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm happy you're here. Can you tell us, for anyone who maybe has not listened to the 13th Floor, what it's about and one of your favorite episodes that you've recorded?
Sure, yeah. We're a conspiracy, paranormal, all things strange podcast, and we take things from a more comedic angle. Mm-hmm. And just in terms of like food, remote viewing is a really popular episode because of the tomato rant. So highly recommend if you haven't heard the tomato rant, check out remote viewing on the 13th floor.
That is, I remember that one. And then we have a new guest to the show, Gareth. Gareth, welcome. What would you like to promo right now?
Well, thank you for having me. And if I had to plug anything, I'd plug Tahlsound, which is a donation-based, family-friendly summer concert series. It also features a bunch of Lexington food, which gets my foodie angle in.
Yes.
That's TAHLSOUND.com, which is an anagram for Southland. Mm-hmm. But also just personally am a big film fan, especially of the film in question.
Yes. And gentlemen, this film is one where James was like, oh, this is the one I want to do. And then Gareth was like, oh my God, I have to be a part of that. So we came together.
We actually arm wrestled, and then it was a complete tie.
Yes.
So we both get to be here.
Exactly. I had like a little, battle royale in the backyard. All right. So we're going to be talking about the one, the only, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Is this one of y'all's favorite movies?
It's pretty high on the ranking, yeah.
And when it comes to cult classics, I mean, it's up there in the ranks of that era, Rocky Horror Picture Show and, those movies that are just iconic.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. So we have a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead. Let's just get into the mood of what today's episode is going to be like in our amuse-bouche. So I have 3 questions, gentlemen. This is, I think, a fun little series of questions. We'll start, James, with you for your answers. Okay. So the first question, do you think initially the intent of this movie was to be more of a comedy horror hybrid, or do you think initially it started more as a horror and then they leaned into it?
I definitely think from the outset they were trying to be more serious,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just organically had to pivot in a more silly direction. Just the way it just occurred on its own.
Yeah. What about you, Gareth?
I mean, it's 100% because, when they were trying to finally work on a first feature film, Raimi's at Michigan State University and his friend Rob Tapert decides like, no, we should really just do this. They grew up doing Super 8 films and all that stuff together. And they were trying to pick a genre because, they'd done hokey comedies before, sure, which is why it turned out as a hokey comedy. Yeah. But they did a film. Oh God, what was it?
Into the Woods.
No, it's Within the Woods.
Within the Woods.
But there was one. This Is Murder. And the only scene, it was such a bad movie that the only scene that really sold was this like jump moment. So when they were talking about, when like what worked for them, that's what moved them into the horror genre, and they spent forever going to the drive-in and watching all of these 2 for $2 drive-in horror flicks, and watching the cars, and when the pace slowed down, you'd get everybody's car horn honking, and when there wasn't enough gore or something going on, you get everybody's headlight, or if there was terrible special effects, you get everybody's headlights on the screen. And so those were the 2 things that showed them that okay, cool, we can make a horror film because we don't need, and the third thing that they really noticed was that none of these movies had a star.
Yeah, they benefit from a more random cast of characters.
Right.
'Cause-
The comedies at the time
yeah.
are like Woody Allen
Yeah.
and like, you can't afford that.
Right. And it benefits in a lot of ways. Like for me personally, if I'm watching a horror film and I know the actor pre-existing, it makes it harder for me to suspend my disbelief. It's easy for me to believe that John Candy is, trying to raise some kids in comedic circumstances. But if he's getting chased by a guy with a hook, seeing that he's John Candy makes it less scary.
So with their budget restraints,
Yes.
they were able to, they decided on that genre. And that's when they did Within the Woods to see if they could do it. It was their prototype.
Yes.
Because to sell a movie, after having nothing other than a couple films that you've shown at your college, which is, by the way, where it started.
Right.
Sure.
Well, which, by the way, when I said Into the Woods, immediately it made me laugh internally because I'm like, Into the Woods
play.
is way different.
It's a very different, very different.
But yeah, it was like pretty much they decided to go ahead and make a trailer so that way they could try and raise some funds. And the whole we'll talk more about the funding process in a minute because I feel like that's a really crucial part to talk about when we're talking more about the movie itself. But definitely,
Coen Brothers stole the idea, by the way.
wow, Coen Brothers. I know that they got involved a bit with them afterwards, so we'll talk a little more about that too. There's so much to look forward to, little nuggets of gold everywhere. Well, let's move on to our second question. What are your thoughts of the overall arching structure of the Evil Dead movies in terms of, do you think this is in like the same timeline? Do you think this is a multiverse kind of situation, Gareth?
Same timeline. Absolutely same timeline. And I think the reason why I stand by that is actually getting beyond the movie that we're talking about specifically. If you follow it down to Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and that it's Ash versus the Evil Dead is the thing that makes me go, oh, dude, he's old and fat. And so no, I think it is absolutely the same timeline.
Yeah, likewise. The way I tend to think of it is one is a kind of like a prototype iteration, and then two is more a genuine reimagining that's canon. In other words. So yeah, the things that are not present in one that are present in two are the canonical occurrences.
Wasn't there something involving, because I saw a lot of, the reason why I wanted to ask this question is because I saw a lot of people going back and forth about it online. And so did they not have the rights from the first one to be able to actually put it in the second one, and that's why they sort of did this recreation?
Right. It was an uphill battle, and actually, funny enough, Stephen King helped with that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the first one. The first one, and then he became attached to it. And,
right.
Yeah, and then they just apparently became, buds.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't get the distribution of Evil Dead without Stephen King seeing it at Cannes.
Yeah.
Actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they actually approached him and were like, "Hey, could we get a review from you because we heard you really liked it from some person we were sitting next to or whatever."
If you listen to Bruce Campbell, he actually approached them.
Nice.
Really?
Yeah, and he made his first initial quote, and the best thing to happen to horror, whatever it was, and they were like, "Well, can we use that?" And he was like, "Hey, you got to tack on this year."
Yeah, because I was listening to an interview with Sam Raimi, and he was saying that someone had mentioned to him when he was sitting there that he had liked it, and he made a comment about it. So Sam Raimi had actually approached him, was like, "Hey, can you write a little nugget
blurb,
for us?"
so we
Yeah.
can put on a poster.
And then he's like, "Actually, I'm gonna put it in this magazine. You can just take it from the magazine."
It was
Nice.
Twilight Zone magazine.
Yes, that's right. So
I'm entirely too nerdy about this stuff.
that's great. I love it. I love it. And where are you getting most of your source material?
I'm a huge Bruce Campbell fan, and so I've listened to all of his books.
Nice.
I've met him once
Likewise.
at the Man with the Screaming Brain premiere
Cool.
at the Kentucky Theater. Which, if you're listening to this, do support the Kentucky Theater.
Yes. But yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting because I sort of was sitting there I feel like you don't have to necessarily disregard the first one, but I feel like you sort of need to set them apart because the second one is different Ash is a bit different with the character as well.
Oh, infinitely.
You know, and then the third one, he's a bit different. And I haven't gotten to see Army Verdus. I haven't seen the full of the second, but because this was actually last night was the first time I watched this movie. So I just,
which is worthwhile. The whole thing is worthwhile that you've started your Evil Dead experience.
I just popped the cherry on it. I just haven't gotten to watch the rest yet. But just watching clips from the other two, you can see how different that character is. And so I feel like you almost have to just use this as like a source material, but then not necessarily a remake, but
requel is the term that's thrown around.
I had already seen it, but I had to watch 2 actually for Marksbury. It was I can't remember which class. It must have not been the one you were in.
No, yeah.
But the word that he kept throwing around, and I can't separate the word from the movie because of this, is just pastiche. Because the second one, it's like a flipping collage of a bunch of different genres and ideas.
Yeah. That must have been like history of film 2, because I was in history of film 1.
Yeah, there was something.
Yeah.
Well, on top of that, I mean, it goes without saying the concept of them sitting in the screening rooms and everybody's laughing at the first one. Yeah. And it's such a bold move to go, okay, let's lean into that.
Yeah.
Such a bold move.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the third question, just because I feel like it has to be asked, how did you all feel about the remake by Alvarez in 2013?
Mixed.
Yeah, wasn't a huge fan.
Yeah, usually to me a remake, the most important thing about it is that you have some loyalty to the source material. Well, they pulled that off okay.
Agreed.
You have to have some reason to reboot it, like technological changes. Okay, well, that's a good argument. But the tone, they could not recapture. And that's kind of like the best thing about this movie is the tone. So I don't resent that they attempted it like a lot of remakes. Yeah. But I do think it ultimately failed in its goal.
I agree. I think what they tried to do was catch what Raimi's original intention was with the first one by being like, we're gonna make a horror film that's the Evil Dead.
Right.
You know, I mean the source material of the Necronomicon and all of that stuff is good stuff. Yeah. But it lacked the tone. Yeah. Exactly right.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's keep going here. We got a lot to talk about. This is going to be a 4-hour-long episode, I'm sure. Let's move into our apps haps. All right, so the apps haps today. We really didn't have too much food featured in this movie, if really any. So they have a bottle of champagne at one point. So I thought, why don't we talk a little bit about maybe the history of champagne, a couple of recipes for champagne-based cocktails, and maybe some things that might pair with it food-wise.
Okay, sounds good.
So we have just a little information here. Apparently, I didn't know this before, champagne was initially introduced to northern France, at the time called Gaul, by the Romans. Yep. So I didn't know too much about that, but yeah, apparently it has to be like from a particular part of France in order to be considered champagne. What's a little bit you know about that?
Yeah, France is very stringent about the location of things. So in order to be called a certain wine or cheese or even meat product, it has to come from that region. So like, for example, cognac comes from the cognac region. Champagne comes from a Champagne region, and Pinot Noir comes from a proper region associated with that as well. So anything like that, Camembert, what have you, it has to come from a certain area. So they don't really like it when people call Prosecco champagne or California sparkling white wine champagne for that reason.
Gotcha. And so just sort of moving right into the good stuff now at this point. The first thing I wanted to start with, which is a more summer drink.
Oh, sure.
So I've talked about this before on the podcast. I'm going to talk about it again because I enjoy it. I like doing a nice wine mimosa mix.
That makes sense.
So typically I like to get just regular old, not super expensive champagne because why? You're going to be having the wine in with it as well. So go ahead and get just bottle champagne, whether it's barefoot, whatever. Get your bottle of champagne you prefer. And then I like to get some blackberry wine. or some blueberry wine. Yeah. Put just a little bit on the top of that, and then it turns the drink a pretty color.
Yeah.
So your blackberry will be purple. Blueberry will be a little more blue.
Makes sense.
And then put the type of berry floating on the top. Yeah. Nice. Of course, you got to have your orange juice as well thrown in there too. I go non-pulp because what are you doing?
Yeah. I love pulpy orange juice, but not for a cocktail.
Yeah, I don't plan on eating my cocktail.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I believe this is also a conversation I've had with Coley on this podcast. Sometimes it's hard to remember all that is said and not said on this podcast. But yeah, so doing that is just a nice way to, if you're tailgating or you're on vacation, or maybe you just want to sit on the back deck or porch with a little drink. That's a nice breakfast one to have. The next one going with the season is fall.
Okay.
So it's called the Fall 75.
Oh, okay.
Never heard of it before this.
It's a riff on the French 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the ingredients for this one is 1.5 ounces of cognac or gin.
Makes sense.
1/2 ounce of blood orange juice.
Okay.
I know
One of
you
my
like
favorites.
blood orange juice, yeah. 1/2 ounce of vanilla berry syrup. Yeah. 2 ounces of brut champagne. Recommended is the GH Mum Grand Cordon Brut.
Wow.
Or your favorite dry sparkling wine. And then the vanilla berry syrup that we just mentioned, they have a recipe as well. You can find this, by the way, on food52.com.
Interesting.
Once again, food52.com. So this nice little syrup that they have, once again, it's called vanilla berry, and it's 1 cup of water, 1 cup of mixed berries, fresh or frozen.
Okay.
You can do either.
Mixed berries.
1 vanilla bean pod. Sure. Split lengthwise and seeds scraped out. And then 1 cup of granulated sugar. Yeah. So I have a feeling you might go ahead and, you're putting it into a saucepan.
Yeah. I knew
over
that was
medium
coming.
heat.
And then straining it too, I'm sure.
Yeah, they put here just so that way you can have that. It is like we said, put into a medium saucepan over medium heat. You're combining the water and the berries first, then the vanilla bean pod. You bring it to a light simmer until the berries split and begin to release their juices. Add in the sugar and gently stir to dissolve. Remove the syrup from the heat and allow it to cool. Strain out the berries, like you mentioned, and the vanilla seeds, and then you can store that syrup in maybe like a mason jar, glass jar of some sort, in the refrigerator for up to 2 weeks.
Nice.
So that sounds great on ice cream.
It does. Yeah, I'd pour that on something.
Yeah, make it even like a little spongy cake. That would be really good. Oh, okay. You get like, how you have your strawberry shortcake or an angel food. You get that type of cake. And then you add the syrup with fresh berries on top of it. Oh my God. Okay. I'm game. Let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our fun little, I didn't even mean to do a food pairing yet, but that sounds great. And then the last one, this is not really a seasonal one, but I just liked the name. So based on the name alone, the Final Countdown.
Okay.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to hear about the Final Countdown? So the ingredients for this is 1/2 ounce of London dry style gin, 1/2 ounce of green chartreuse. I can never say that well, so thank you. And 1/2 ounce of Luxardo Maraschino liquor.
Okay.
1/2 ounce of lime juice. And then dry champagne or another type of dry sparkling wine.
Wow.
Yes. And so this one, by the way, also can be found on food52.com. The directions here: shake all the ingredients except for the champagne with ice until chilled, because that could be a disaster.
Yes. Never shake champagne.
Yes. Then you strain into a coupe or a champagne flute and top with the champagne. So that's something just very simple. It looks like it's almost like the color of a margarita.
I can see that. The chartreuse probably really greens it up.
Yeah. So in terms of foods that typically you may pair with champagne, I'm thinking oysters.
That works, yeah.
Maybe a little caviar.
Caviar. Popular.
Seafood.
Yes.
Okay. a charcuterie board.
Yes.
I'm thinking berries and cheeses and meats, crackers, nice little savory, salty,
lighter cheeses.
sweet.
Yeah, nothing, not like Rockford or anything. You know,
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking more along the lines of like a brie.
Exactly.
Yes, a nice, more mellow cheese. Honestly, I wouldn't even really think about putting a cheddar on there.
Yeah, I think that's pushing it.
Yeah, so I think something a little
Maybe a
more.
Gouda, but yeah,
Yes.
that's about as far as I'd go.
Yes, the Gouda is as spicy as we're going to go on that. Also, it mentions here online like a smoked salmon may be good.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
A pasta,
Yeah.
maybe. I would think
A
either.
lighter pasta.
Yeah, I would think either more of like a really loose Alfredo or a lighter white wine based shrimp scampi would be maybe good. Also, they mention berries and stuff like that. Canapé,
Okay.
throw that in there. Apricots, crispy fried chicken is one they're mentioning.
That's a little surprising, but I can see it working.
Yeah.
Chicken in general would work.
Yeah, so, and then mussels. So you're looking at more from the sea,
Makes sense.
a lean meat.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put a steak with it.
Yeah.
No beefs.
Yeah, delicate flavors for a
Yeah,
delicate
no beef
wine.
Wellington up in here. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah, that's sort of where along the lines between what I'm seeing online and the recipes mentioned there. Once again, that's food52.com. You can get those recipes for the last two drinks. The first, I can't really give you a recipe because it's all by look when it comes to my mimosa. The closest I can tell you is if you have a flute, you get half of it and you fill it with orange juice. You get about a quarter, put the champagne in, and then a quarter of the wine. Or you do a little more champagne, a little less wine. Bada bing, bada boom. There you go. You got your bubbles, you got your oranges, you're good to go. So, yeah, I think that all sounds good. Is there any other food you can think of that might pair well with a champagne or a sparkling wine?
Anything that's kind of citrus dominant would be good. Like, let's say if you made a pasta with like lemon sauce.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite pastas. That'd be good.
Okay. With your lemon sauces, like, how do you normally make that?
What I do is I take a saucepan or skillet that doesn't, like non-aluminum, because it's going to be acidic.
Yeah.
And what I do is I add the juice of a lemon, and then I add the zest of a lemon. Then I add a little pat of butter and usually a little bit of olive oil. And then I just bring it to a simmer, brown that butter just a little bit, and then I will toss any kind of pasta in it, usually angel hair. And it's fantastic with chicken, it's fantastic with fish, and it definitely pairs with champagne.
Ooh, that sounds good. I just thought of actually one too
nice.
that I make. I usually like to get either raviolis or tortellinis.
Okay.
And I like to make more of a butter olive oil based sauce. So it's just butter, olive oil, get a little bit of lemon.
Okay.
You could do juice, either from like one of those like already pre-done bottles or a fresh lemon, and just put just a little squirt to give it the acidity.
Okay.
And then get fresh garlic, really like chop that up really well. Get a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of the like chili flakes.
Oh, yeah.
So you can give it some heat. Then I go ahead and I throw in some diced tomatoes or some cherry tomatoes and onions. You make sure those are nice and sort of more caramelized.
Okay.
And some spinach at like the last minute, just so you can saute that a little bit. Then I would add in the tortellini or the raviolis.
What kind of filling do you like for tortellini?
Oh, I like mushroom probably the most. Good old like cheese is good too. I accidentally got chicken one time and I actually was really happy about that. Now, in order to make it, because I also like to make it my own homemade marinara sauce as well. It's very like the simplistic version, but also if you wanted to make this closer to more of like maybe a blonde sauce or a vodka sauce, then maybe go ahead and just like really puree the tomatoes. And that way it gives you more of that as well.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that's sort of like one of my more simple favorite dishes to make. And it's so good that I have to like limit the amount I make or pack it away before I can eat the whole skillet because my God, it's so good. All right. Well, let's go ahead now. Let's go into our cinematic entree. This movie, I'm going to go ahead and just I'm going to be your all's guide, and you guys are pretty much going to be regurgitating information because you know so much about it. I'll have a few things to say here and there, but definitely things I'd like to discuss with you all and get your opinions on too. So just to throw it out here, this is 5 college kids decide to go to a cabin in the woods in Tennessee.
Always a good idea.
Yeah, Tennessee of all places. Of course it happens in Tennessee, this
As a
movie.
Kentuckian, I always want to go to a cabin in Tennessee.
Right.
Although surprisingly go to a large number of them.
Gatlinburg. I mean, you know, when you go for like relaxing retreat, I'm thinking more Gatlinburg instead of, you know, Morristown, but you know, whatever. But they quickly discover that instead of it's going to be relaxing, it's going to be a bit of a hellish stay. So let's talk pre-production. We dipped a little bit into that during our amuse-bouche, but going back to that now, Gareth, lay out maybe a little bit of how these guys sort of got this going.
So you've got all of these buddies from MSU that, Tappert was Ivan Ramey's roommate. And, of course, Bruce actually dropped out of college after the first semester. He had been doing stock theater. Or summer stock, and decided that college was just silly. He actually had to call his cousin because he was still stuck doing it, and he was just like, just enroll me in a bunch of theater classes, it'll be fine. And he did the whole thing, but I think this is a direct quote. I mean, I'll paraphrase it, but I think this could probably be in quotation marks. It's like, I knew what upstage and downstage were. Like, I wasn't going to become an actor doing this. And so he dropped out, but Sam was still in school and like did the whole thing through college because he was trying to avoid reality because what he wanted to do was make movies. And it was that trio that was finally like let's make a feature film. And it would take all 3 of them to really do it. Bruce not being in school, and Tappert, you know, he was an economics major that switched to like fish and wildlife. And Sam Raimi at one point even said, he was like, you know, I wanted to make films, but I didn't know how I could do it. And so I never like, you know, when Tappert comes to me, he's like, yeah, I want to do this. I didn't want to shoot him down, but he was like, there's no way that this is possible. And so they followed this whole path line down to it. But it was a lawyer of their friends that taught them that, you know, you have to make, you know, you got to figure out how to make the money.
Nice.
And that was their first step, was they got this legal document drawn up where the first page was these 11 things that were just these horrendous warnings of like, I don't remember the individual things, but essentially it's like, you shouldn't invest in this. You shouldn't invest in this. Also, you shouldn't invest in this. You're not going to make any money, and you shouldn't invest in this. And they had X number of days to get the amount of money together, and it had to be a specific amount for it to work. And begging, borrowing, and stealing, they pulled it off.
Nice.
Yeah, they even like, I think at one point Bruce Campbell like pretty much made his parents' house like collateral or something.
That's
for them.
Towards the end of the production. His parents got divorced once they finished primary shooting. As he came home from shooting Evil Dead, which I'm sure we'll get to the shooting process.
Oh, yeah.
Unpleasant. So he came home from this unpleasant experience, and his parents were like, we're getting divorced.
Awesome.
Is it my fault? It's the movie's fault.
And so he leveraged his dad's property, like a hunting property, cabin property, to get the loan that allowed them to process the film from 60 millimeter to 35 so that they could get it shot. But that's well down the line. Because ironically, it was a bunch of dentists that were one of their big.
Yeah,
I can believe that.
Yeah, they were big
Totally
investors.
believe that. Yeah.
But the neat part about it, and the thing that I think I enjoyed the most about hearing the story, is that there are so many other indie filmmakers that listen to this story and go, dude, you can beg, borrow. They were doing cold calls.
Yeah.
They were opening the phone book and just being like, hey, I'm this guy. I'm making a horror film.
We all live in Detroit.
Yeah.
Would you like to support the local arts?
Nowadays, we got blue sky laws, so it's a little tougher, but still. Yeah, in those days, you could literally just call up some grandma and be like, listen, we got this thing, and you're going to make a lot of money off of it. Give us a check, Granny.
I mean, it's just that's Kickstarter pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
But that's, I mean, I think until I heard the story, which was after watching the movie. I didn't fully appreciate the movie as much initially because knowing how much work goes into making a film, having been on film sets, it's a lot of work. And trying to get funding is the hardest part. And it is the make or break for a lot of people. So just knowing everything that they did with this was really impressive.
And imagine pre-internet too.
Yeah.
They talked about it. There's like, there's a book or two that we could get at the local bookstore. So you want to make an independent film.
Yeah.
Like, but beyond that, like,
Right.
The way he rants, basically this is just, anything that I say is just going to be a commercial for If Chins Could Kill. Strongly suggest the audiobook because it's read by Bruce Campbell. But, he's like sitting down to make a budget for the first time. Like, don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have no clue. Just sort of now moving into the Morristown story. So I know a little story. I'm going to share it. I know you know it, Gareth. James, you don't know it. Nope. So I'm going to share it. I was really excited. Like, anytime I can get anything over on James, I'm really ecstatic because he knows everything. So Morristown, they have this cabin they initially had set up, fell through. When they get there, they're now looking for a new location. They go and they find this cabin. It's
Via who, Callie?
Via who? Oh, God.
Who's your location scout?
Oh, God, I can't remember. Who is
Harry
that?
Holt.
Yeah.
He's a very important person in the production.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I know. I just remember when Sam Raimi's telling this story. He's like, yeah, we got there and this place is covered in cow dung. And just kept reiterating the cow dung.
Yeah,
so that's what's
absolutely failed. And they're in Morristown, Tennessee.
Yeah, they're already there. They now have to find this new location. So they find out that there's this little cabin that they end up shooting the movie in. This guy built in like the late 1800s. He ends up dying, sits abandoned for about 20 years. This grandmother, mother, and daughter end up moving into the cabin. And this valley was like notorious for when there's lightning storms, lightning being attracted to it because of the minerals in the ground. Really cool to watch, apparently, according to Sam. So this little girl wakes up during one of the storms and she's really scared. So she runs into her mom's room and her mom has died.
Oh.
She's terrified, petrified. She runs into her grandma's room. Her grandma's dead. They don't know how the two women simultaneously in the same night died, but they did. So this little girl, of course, she's freaking out.
Yeah.
She just lost her only family she had.
2 generations in 5 seconds. Yeah.
Right? So she takes off running 4 miles through the woods to the closest neighbor that she could find. They help raise her. So the guys are now fast forward to getting ready to shoot this film. And this old guy comes like wandering around. He's like, oh, there's this like lady that wanders through the woods during storms and stuff. And so
she was in a mental facility.
So there's this like possible haunting story attached to this cabin.
I'm so proud of you right now, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pause for content for...
Oh, I'll save that for another time because that was beautiful noise. Yeah, it's like I went online and was like, let me get sound effects.
No, that is one of the coolest stories. That is one of the coolest stories. I'm so glad that you stole it from me.
Nice.
Thank you.
But Gary Holt, the guy who found them the place, is actually a really interesting cat as well. Because the first cabin did fall through and they hooked up with this dude, and the stories of like him being like, all right, y'all hold back now right quick. I need to let these people know that we're coming. I don't want any of you Yankees like coming up here. And he's the one who found it. And he's the dude that hooked him up on Thanksgiving, where Bruce Campbell said that he had not ever had a meal like it or one better since.
Wow.
And moonshine, which apparently led to some interesting, at least one interesting evening. But
Speaking of illicit drugs, there's a scene where they're smoking cannabis in the film.
Yeah.
It's real. That's not,
They actually had to like do another take because they all got so high and were acting so like crazy all over the place.
Yeah. So not imaginary weed.
Yeah. If I wasn't concerned about my sobriety in terms of being able to actually function, I'd be like, why aren't we doing shots of lightning moonshine? I don't feel like dying today. So maybe we can indulge in that another time, but I would not be able to guide us through this with the moonshine. But moonshine is delicious. If you haven't tried it, It's worth a try. Yep. Does anyone have a favorite flavor of moonshine they like to drink?
Moonshine shouldn't be flavored.
I've actually never had commercial moonshine.
Okay.
I've only had the kind that I consider to be real moonshine because you don't pay taxes on it.
Mm-hmm.
You pour a little bit in the mason jar lid, and if it burns blue, you know you got good stuff. If it burns orange, it was probably made in a car radiator. That is a direct Bruce Campbell from Mr. Holt quote. Boom.
Fascinating. Yeah, I don't know about these things. I'm not from here originally.
You can do the spin for the tornado.
Oh.
For the tornado.
Yeah, the bubble sizes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
See, we have things we can talk about involving alcohol. We have more alcohol later.
What movie should we do so that we can come up with a moonshine cocktail?
Oh man, what's that? White Lightning, the race car driver. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, like a friend of mine's grandmother had some nice, like, I think they added apple cinnamon. No, it wasn't her grandmother. It was a friend of the
apple pie in a jar. Yeah,
apple pie moonshine.
Oh yeah, they just brought we're tailgating at a UK football game, and all of a sudden there's this mason jar that's coming around.
Yep.
Take a sip of this. Okay. And so, I'm like, what the hell is that?
It tastes like dessert.
It was really good. But yeah, I definitely felt it after that.
Yeah, it's basically 90 proof apple butter. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so whoever that like friend of the grandmother's was or whatever, like, thanks for the moonshine from a decade ago. It was delicious. They carved me up after that.
90 proof apple butter. Totally still.
Yeah, that might be the quote of the episode. So, okay, we have our story of our real life horror that happened here at the cabin, but let's go into like the actual horror involving shooting this film. So, James, do you have anything that initially stuck out to you before we go to Gareth, who's the walking encyclopedia?
Too much.
No, this is good.
This is what you're here for.
The only thing I really know, and it highlights Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell's relationship in general, is a lot of times he casts him just to see him get hurt, and he got hurt quite a bit in the entire production. I mean, like ragdoll stuff.
Yes. Yeah, like lost teeth.
Yeah.
Fractured ribs.
I mean, yeah, he did not undergo OSHA norm acting experience. So yeah.
Oh yeah, the actors nowadays, they'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm working too long of a day," and he's like, "I just got run over by a motorcycle.
I lost 2 incisors." Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, he's a badass. What can we say? Gareth,
he's just always willing to hurt himself. That relationship stems all the way back to when we were in school. There's a funny little anecdote where, like, I forget what class it was, but they shared, I do remember what it was. It was radio broadcasting. He shared with Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi sat behind him. And any time that Bruce got called on to do something, he would take a sharpened pencil. Like, seriously, this is straight out of Bruce's mouth. He would take a sharpened pencil and stab it into Bruce's back until he couldn't talk normal. And when Bruce confronted him about it, he was like, dude, why? Like,
what?
Am I allowed to curse?
Like usually we try not to do like the F-bomb.
Yeah, okay. Well,
but you can. I can
WTF?
What the WTF? And he was like, "I'm helping you, because you like this is good. It's a good test for you to maintain your thing, dude." Sam Raimi's
he's a little sadist.
Sadistic little dude. But yeah, he does sure love beating up on Bruce.
Yeah.
A lot of injuries.
Yeah.
A lot of really dangerous things done.
Mm-hmm. One person had their eyelashes ripped off.
In the plaster cast.
Yeah. James is currently blinking his eyes. He's like, nope, not about this.
And she's scribbling on the I love that story.
Yeah.
She's like sitting there scribbling on the pad, like, because you don't think about the fact when plaster sets up, it gets hot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they're doing it old school style. And so you just rub Vaseline on the face and then you put the plaster on. And she's got a pad because she can't speak, obviously. And she's like, this is getting warm. This is getting really warm.
Oh, no.
When can I stop? This is getting really hot. And yeah, they ripped her eyelashes.
Oh my God. Yeah, and then like the contacts that they had to use.
The glass contacts.
Yeah, like they only had up to 15 minutes to shoot with them before the eyes lost all oxygen and were like suffocated. So yeah, it was insane. We'll talk more about like the effects and stuff because there's a lot of cool ones with it. But yeah, let's talk about some of this camera work, because something that immediately sort of stuck out to me was this really stark contrast between this almost chaotic handheld versus this like in the car we're driving and everything's pretty chill until we almost get in an accident, and then we have that like hilarious scene with with Cheryl or whatever her name is, and and so like it's a really nice contrast because it's already showing you from the get-go that this is going to be a wild ride, y'all. So
keep talking about rides. We're gonna have to circle back to the classic at some point if we don't do it right now. Like,
well, just go ahead.
I'm doing it right now. The classic.
Yes, do it.
So that's Sam Raimi's car. It is the classic.
Yep.
He still owns it.
Yep. It's in every movie.
It's been in every movie he's ever been.
And do you know why?
I mean,
according to Bruce Campbell, he lost his virginity in that car.
It wasn't Bruce. It wasn't Bruce that said it. It was one of the other guys. But yeah, apparently he got laid for the first time
in said car.
And
it's in every flipping movie as a result.
And Bruce tried to kill it one time when they did Crime Wave. A huge flop, which we could get into that after. He did Evil Dead, and then they did Crime Wave afterwards. Horrendous flop, but done with the Coen brothers.
Yes.
So we can get into that later too. But yeah, the set designer comes in and goes, to do this shot, we need the right interior, and the only car that works is Sam's. Bruce has been trying to kill the classic for years. He's like, no, just use Sam's. And so he shows up to set the next day, and he's like doing direction and starts looking, and he's like, dude, did you strip the classic? But he put it back together, man. It's apparently sitting in a... Yeah, Liam Neeson gets slammed into it on the hood in Darkman. It's in Spider-Man.
It should have like Actors Guild credits.
It really should.
Yeah, it's like a flippin' thespian on its own.
It's got a better right to a SAG card than half the actors have.
Yeah.
I've just got to make a crude comment. What a lay that must have been, because my God,
to be that memorable,
that car around that long,
right, and have it in all the movies.
No offense, Sam, but when you look like that, that probably took a lot of work.
So maybe that's why he's like, I worked really hard for that. So this is my pride and joy. Well, the video and then moving into the audio, I feel like they're really perfectly paired, because the audio itself, it has like all of those ominous elements that you need. It has this creepy swing hitting into the cabin window. First of all, there's no wind, so I'm already like, that's nope number one.
Yep.
And that's after the bridge like has part of it like fall through, so that's actually nope number one. Then it stops, and then you have the creaking of the cellar door, and you have just all of these like elements that really, I feel like, just build this perfect atmosphere for what's about to happen.
And that guttural noise when they do like kind of that weird POV. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Which is the camera strapped to a 2x6 and Sam Raimi running through the woods.
Okay.
No, seriously.
I figured it was a person trying to, interesting.
They call it it's the exact opposite of a steady cam. They call it the shaky cam.
There you go.
And then they have like for that first scene that you see where we're like, in the water, that's Bruce holding the camera on a pontoon being pushed.
Wow.
So so it's like everybody did everything in this movie.
Yeah. If you weren't shooting, you were
the people were the equipment. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And the brilliance of the different setups that they had, just being built out of 2x4s, stuff, because they didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Vascam. I'm sure you've heard of it. So it basically did a U and duct taped on a 2x4. When they do the window breaks, it's just a T-bar.
Nice.
Like shoved through a window so that the camera didn't break. Like everything just, please prevent the camera from breaking. Which is why everyone got hurt constantly.
Right.
Yes.
And because you mentioned sound, sorry, I've got too many.
No, go ahead.
When they were in the darkest days of the shooting, we're talking like at the very end.
Oh, like psychologically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Like psychologically, Sam was like laying up in bed, and there was just this natural creepy wind. And he went to his poor beleaguered sound guy in the middle of the night and was like, I need you to record this. And dude, I don't know how that conversation could have, like, I can imagine being that sound guy being like,
right.
But they ended up using it. They ended up using it for like a lot of the film. But because they were in the cabin and there was this spooky wind, it's a practical sound effect.
Nice.
Yeah.
But poor sound guy that got woke up at 2
right.
in the morning.
Yeah, just poor all of those people, because this was a labor and torture of love.
That didn't make them very much money until a long time.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like the longest payoff like ever. So like also in terms of sound, I think about the recording from the professor and him sort of giving us this like already ready to go cautionary tale.
Yeah. I'll touch on it later because that's my favorite quote. But that's the best foreshadowing ever. Is the quote where he expressly says, "The only way of dealing with this through dismemberment," and you're like, "Oh, okay, now I know what I'm in for." There's gonna be limbs flying.
Keep listening to this tape.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, just the whole thing with that, like the guy fast forwards through. So I'm like, that was probably crucial information we needed to know. And now there's this, you know, other language being spoken. I think like Sumerian or something like that. And, you know, oh God, what's about to happen? Well, we know it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Which let's talk about the not so good things that are about to happen to these people. Let's start with the relics that they find. So what was like, oh, you're pointing?
Yep.
You have a relic?
Necronomicon.
Oh, okay. I was like, what are we pointing at?
Which this is pedantic, but it does annoy me that they call it Necronomicon Ex Mortis because it's like it's a misnomer. It's double,
it's redundant.
It's the Book of the Dead names of the dead.
Yeah. Which Book of the Dead was the original title of the film.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then one of the people was like, hey, I suggest you change that.
It was Irvin Shapiro.
Because he
Glad
was
you
like,
You want to hear some of the other ones that were thrown out?
yes, please and thank you.
Blood Flood.
Oh.
Fe monsters, as in like female. 101% dead. And Death of the Dead.
Wow. Well, I'm glad they went with Evil Dead.
Yeah, because those other ones suck.
Yes. Wow.
And Raimi's obsession with, or concept for Necronomicon thing has always been labeled as you know, he took because he had a literary course where he studied Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And that's actually not, that's not
You're wearing a
accurate.
Lovecraft shirt, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, thought so.
And the book that I know I can see, the book I pointed to is a complete collection of Lovecraft stuff.
Makes sense.
I come by my nerdness on it. But actually, it was the literary course. He read Mountains at Madness and Ancient History course that happened at the same time. That lined up with each other. So it's not just an homage to Lovecraft, because when he was asked about it, he was like, I don't know, some story.
I like the voice change there.
I'll do Raimi all day. If he hears this and he's insulted, just come punch me in the face. We'll get to hang out.
So historically, is he talking about the actual, like, the Egyptian Book of the Dead?
It's a combination of the two.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's got an interesting face. That's
Or
for sure.
really, he just doesn't know. They just both happen at the same time. It's like,
that's,
it seems
that's
like
why I
a
was
good idea.
curious, because, history, there's two notable ones. There's Egypt and Tibet. So, yeah. Huh, weird.
Intrigue. Yeah. So, like, what's your all's favorite, like, relic that they found? Besides the book, I feel like is a pretty, like, obvious one.
But it's the best one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was like really creeped out by like the whittled like little skull that ends up being on like the handle of the sword, I think, at one point. That thing sort of creeped me out. I'm like, nope, not about that.
Can I make a curveball, even though it's not entirely a relic?
Yeah.
The deer head above the
Yes.
fireplace.
Yes.
Sure. No, that makes
Yep.
sense.
I was like, nope, don't like that either. Not about it.
Yeah, this is redundant because it ties in with the quote, but and it's not technically a relic, but just the voice recording. Like that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that a lot, and I felt like it was such a intelligent way of being able to throw a little more of the history and the mythology of this
Right.
world into it.
Yeah.
So I always like things like that.
So really, you could just even say like the fact that the recorder and player was still there.
Yes.
Like, which is also like, dude, everything's dusty.
Right.
I don't know if you ever
And
worked
there's just
with
an
reel to reel.
immaculate recorder. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you ever worked with reel to reel, but that's not how that would go.
Yeah, not at all. Let's talk about some usual tropes that come into horror films. So, James, what were some of the ones that you immediately saw right off the bat, besides for like kids going to a cabin in the woods?
Right. Yeah. Well, for starters, anytime somebody loses something, it's going to become like super important later on. And there were a number of instances of that, like leaving things unlocked, where it's like, oh, that's going to be a big issue later.
Yep.
And this is like more. This isn't like a horror trope that's cliche exactly, But the two hillbillies, like those my least favorite part of the movie, frankly. But like it's tough to have a horror movie set in Appalachia without two very exaggerated caricatures turning up.
Yeah, and I believe one of them was Sam Raimi.
Oh yeah, that's
just
right.
sort of chilling there, hanging out, waving. What were some of the ones that you noticed?
I mean, I will say that it's early enough that like it sets up some of the tropes, but I agree with James completely. Like the classic, the car's not going to stop.
Right.
Yep.
The bridge is going to go out.
Like, demonic voices mean bad things are about to happen.
It occurs to me there's something interesting about that because horror movies generally they're just nightmares acted out. That's what a horror film is.
Yeah.
And cars not working, things being missing, those are all things that happen universally. Like mirrors don't work and light switches don't work and cars don't work in dreams. Like period. Absolutely. Like that's a universality. So it's kind of weird to think about that, some of the horror tropes are really dream tropes.
Yeah.
Which is why they play on our subconscious is playing on our conscious.
Yeah. Yeah. Reptile part of us is watching like, this is believable. You should.
Maybe not the demon part, but the car not working.
Yeah.
That's
danger. That's danger. Yeah.
And the reason we freak out about the car not working is because what if the demon part is free?
Right.
Yes. And then we can't get away. At least not easily. Yeah. Which like speaking of like demon things and parts that make you go nope. So I called this like section in my notes nopes and tropes or tropes and nopes.
Nice.
I'm like there's a lot of nopes in this, and so I'm going through and I'm like after nope 8 I'm like I can't keep track of these anymore. Just things like I don't know, like I mentioned the creaky swinging bench and then the dolls hanging from the rafters. That was a little like
something's
I'm nervous. The whole why was Cheryl not like I just was against my will forced to draw something and my hand cramped up and hurt really bad and then I heard voices and the wind was blowing really hard. Like why was this not shared? And then the cellar door just sort of like doing its own thing. Not about it. Yep. And then like poor Cheryl. This poor woman. What scene we're about. Yeah. Oh,
it gets worse.
Jesus Christ. What scene I'm about to go to. Yep. The vine rape scene.
Yeah. Worst Pokemon move ever, by the way.
Oh God. Oh my God. Oh, I think you tickled him really good.
James, I like you already.
First of all, this was not scripted. This was just sort of
it was done after primary filming.
Yeah, like they had the initial script, they went through all that. They're like, let's add this in post. And
the initial script though was 65 pages. And they had 119 minutes of footage, which is absurd. One minute of a page.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's some alchemy there.
But you're absolutely right in that. What's funny is that Raimi cut so much stuff out, but kept the vibe rape scene, but not in Evil Dead 2.
I think he learned his lesson. Like, the way they asked him in the interview I was watching was so funny. It was the guy was like, so why did you do this? And then, like Raimi just sort of has this like smile creep on his face. And I'm like, okay, that's like, you're creeping me out right now. Yeah. But then like they went through and it was just like raw footage of this interview. So he's like, okay, let me go back and I'll ask this a different way. Cause he asked, well, how did you do this? And it's just like, I could have gone my whole life without seeing that. 100% was fine with not. And I mean, there was a part in that same interview where Sam was saying how they wanted to make this different from other horror movies where it has females sort of becoming the damsel in distress. But instead you see the females become the monsters first in this movie.
Right.
And so I'm like, at the same time, you sort of like put that whole
you
like
played yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so circling back, the whole drive-through thing, they noticed that it was like any of the horror movies that got responded to positively had a female protagonist. And
Makes
so
sense.
I'm sure that it had some portion to that.
Sure, and
Yeah.
just the fact that it is a shocking thing, like you know, fair point. You're not gonna honk your horn or flash your lights at that scene.
No.
So, yeah,
Because you're going to be too busy with your jaw.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
the popcorn's falling out of your mouth.
Like, I wish I could have seen my face during that scene. I sent you a meme after Gareth
Yes.
when you texted me,
Yes.
and it was the one where it was like Marlon Wayne's just like,
yeah,
you know, completely shocked looking. That 100% was me during that. And I was like, was not aware this was about to happen. I was taken by surprise. Oh my God. So,
I've looked a lot into how that scene was shot, but we'll just roll over that.
yeah. I heard about, like, they did use like rubber, you
that
know,
makes sense.
rubber
Yeah.
branches and stuff like that. But,
No, actually, it was real vines.
oh,
It
did
was
they
actually-
have
it was an
poison
actual
ivy
vine. It was
happen?
an actual vine monster.
Okay, it was Poison Ivy. She came out from, you know, the DC world. And,
Oof.
Carry on.
Yeah, it was
so we have these 5 characters, and I did want to ask, who are your all's favorite and least favorite characters, James?
Shoot, man, least favorite would be funny enough. Well, favorite easily is Ash himself, because I mean
Right.
it's kind of a no brainer.
answer.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Least favorite though, I can't think of his name, but the
Scott.
yes, that's
Scotty.
the one. That's
Scotty.
Scotty.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like him either.
She's your girlfriend. I
Right,
don't care.
yeah.
I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Scott, same answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
Ash has to be.
That's like the only morality tale part of the movie.
Yeah, it's true.
It is.
He's just like, I don't care that the girls are all
Right.
just biting
I'm
him.
a
out here.
sociopath. Bye. And then he gets his up come up.
Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't even have the best like moment as being a Deadite.
No.
Honestly,
Yeah. No, I knew you all were going to say those because that's
Yeah.
how I felt. So I'm
Sure.
like, I'm going to just take a step in a different direction.
Ooh.
Yeah, because why not? So Ash is the obvious
Yeah.
favorite. But let's say we had to remove him from the equation.
Okay.
So my favorite and least favorite are both the same person. And that is none other than Miss Linda herself.
Okay, I kind of thought that's where you were going to go.
Yes, because the laughing, the childlikeness with
the
the
performance.
demonic.
Yeah.
Oh my! I'm like, please just decapitate her. Decapitate this bitch, please. I
Yeah.
just can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was with Ash when he was like, "Shut up!" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah.
So
fruit seller.
yeah, oh god. So yeah, I was so annoyed by her, but that also I feel like speaks to her performance because she did a very good job
True.
while wearing those painful contacts and that prosthetic on her face and getting her eyelashes ripped off. You know, so I think like she did a pretty good job.
Fair
And I
point.
don't think there was any shemming on the lady. No, there was some shemming on the
There
ladies.
was.
The term shemming comes from the fact that the Three Stooges
Right,
you know,
right.
Shem passed, and they had like a bunch of footage that they still need to fill in.
Yes.
And Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell were big Three Stooges fans, and everyone left because they were overproduction. And so they had random people fill in for some of this stuff. And I know that much, but even I and my Encyclopedia of Evil Dead don't know which scenes are shemmed for the ladies and not. I know that there was a
Interesting.
lovely actress from Pennsylvania or from Tennessee.
Like,
Pennsylvania.
From Pennsylvania, the boomsticks are kicking in.
Yes.
Even though we actually haven't had them.
Yeah.
But no, a lovely actress from Tennessee filled in and did shem a bunch of stuff.
Interesting.
But I'm not sure which scenes particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I know like with the cellar scenes, I think they had to shoot that back in Detroit. And I think both of Rainey's brothers were also shemps in this as well.
Ivan was absolutely a shemp in a couple things. I know that specifically. Sam even did some.
Yeah, so it was like all over the shoulder from the back. That way you couldn't see the face.
Ivan's feet.
At one point, somebody got shot through a door, one of the female characters, and it's like the only flub I'm aware of. You know, it could have. The reason I bring it up now is because it could have been somebody not actually like casted
Yeah.
doing the acting.
Yeah.
But you can very clearly see like the hose used for the blood rather than just a little fun fact.
Interesting. Let's talk about some effects now.
Yeah.
This is a nice natural transition. What were some of y'all's favorite effects that you saw in this movie, and what were maybe some that you thought, could have used maybe a little bit of improvement, but honestly not too much because of that time period?
Yeah. top two, definitely the way they do the POV of the dead itself, the Force.
Shaky cam.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And then just the makeup is fantastic. Like I prefer that style, even though it's done cheap and quick and dirty, way more to like a lot of modern CGI in horror movies because you piece together that what you're seeing is real on some
Yes.
level. It's not too shiny. There's just something normal about it. Like it belongs in the environment where it's taking place.
It's more inherently scary.
Yes,
because it's
100%.
more realistic.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, other than that, really, they could have done better, but for their budget, I think they did an amazing job with just the prosthesis and all that.
I think it was like $350,000 to $375,000 for the budget itself. If you look at The Thing, which we've done an episode on, that was a lot more.
Yeah, I had a whole rant on that one.
a
Yeah.
lot more.
The initial was 90,000.
So
They went over by a lot.
yeah,
Thank
but-
goodness for dentists. Yeah.
The moral of the story is they just kept begging and begging and begging people for money.
taking loans from family members.
But I can put this to bed. Within 6 years, all of their investors were repaid.
Nice.
So that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite moments with the special effects?
I mean, the practical effects to me are eternally going to be better than CGI. I'd rather see a puppet head of something than a CGI version.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Corn syrup's better than flipping computers.
Yes.
But, which it was also the bane of Bruce Campbell, though.
Yeah. Tell that part.
Yeah,
tell that part.
the recipe for their fake blood was essentially 2 parts Caro syrup, 1 part red food coloring, non-dairy creamer, and 1 drop of blue food coloring.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it looks great and
Sure.
getting coated in and doesn't smell bad or anything. But Bruce would talk about how, like, when he would finish a day, he'd have to get in the only way to remove it because it would harden.
Right. Yeah, he's basically a pecan pie.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he compared it to peanut brittle.
Makes sense.
Is he took his shirt off at one point. He was like, "Well, I'll warm it up so it doesn't stick to my body as much." And he sets it by the fire, and he goes to pick it up, and the arm breaks off the shirt.
Yeah, it was
So he would have to take showers, of hot water in his clothes.
right.
That way it would loosen that all up
So he
again.
could get all of this
Golly.
stuff off.
Oh, God.
But yeah, classic recipe. No, it's just the amount of work. Their art director was just a dude with a circ saw. They didn't have anything.
Right.
And the classic chimney, was like actual masonry work. And he's making chairs and then sawing them off at awkward angles. As somebody who's a carpenter, it's really hard to poorly make something.
I see.
If you know how to make something, making something
badly
is kind of hard.
Fair point. Yeah.
And so their art director really does deserve some credit. For the life of me, I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
Edited in.
Yeah. I know there was one shot they did. It just sort of made me think of it because if you were saying it was done at a weird angle where in the woods when Cheryl and Ash are in the car and they're going to look at something and it's at a really weird angle. Apparently the way the camera was placed, it was slightly on its side or something like that. And
Dutch angle. Yeah.
Dutch angle.
So I really I liked that a lot because that also helped, I feel with the aesthetic of just being weird.
Yeah.
And Raimi didn't go to film school, man.
Yeah,
He just watched a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
exactly.
School of Hard Knocks and study. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean I feel
Literal hard knocks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Heard the
feel
story of the bull, right?
Yeah.
I feel when it comes down to it, if you have an eye for that and if you're eager enough to learn, that's how you're going to become educated. It was we were talking, I think, before we started recording about Bruce and knowing, dropping out, and he's I know,
Yeah.
what I need to do for it.
He was just, doing summer stock in somewhere in Michigan, and was going to be enrolled in MSU, and he had his cousin enroll him in college because he didn't really care about college. He was just give me a bunch of theater schools or theater classes, and he dropped out after 1 semester because he was just I don't I'm learning more by doing
Right.
than by like being taught.
Yeah.
And that's not the case for everyone or everything. Like, and specifically, I do want to point out that even in the arts, it's not the case for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is sponsored by Dropout Kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's gonna be like, I mean, I work for an educational music festival. I can't be like, you shouldn't go to college. If you want to work in the arts, just go live on the streets.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But yeah, no, it's an important aspect of the whole thing. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that also sort of translates over to effects as well quite a bit, because really a lot of it is just messing around with things and then being like, oh, that sounded like this. Okay, keep that in my brain for a later time. Or this.
He put black latex paint in his mouth.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah, no.
You're like, oh, screw my digestion system. Like, it's just black latex paint. Just, that was the bile.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God. Yeah. The one thing that really got me, I mean, anytime you have like demon vomit going in your mouth, that's sort of gross. You have like, they I think used milk for like when there's the pus and stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes
so
sense.
like, okay.
Cherry cobbler was another go-to.
Oh, yeah, cherry cobbler. Okay.
Yeah, off-brand cherry cobbler.
Just the part though where Linda gets stabbed in the heel, and the Achilles heel, and just I'm like,
yeah, they did a great job making the injuries that were supposed to happen just visceral.
Yeah, it was hostile before hostile was a thing.
A hairy-chested dude. I don't know if you're a hairy-chested dude. I
am. Yeah.
But basically, to get it to stay steady for the prototype of Evil Dead, they used duct tape.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Because they couldn't get it steady enough. And he was the guy that was like, I know my own pain tolerance. I'll remove it. And Bruce was like, dude, it was the most horrific thing.
Yeah.
It, like more horrifying than the rest of the movie.
I can't even do the little monitors at the doctor. Those hurt. Yeah.
It pains me.
They should have had audio on him when they went to remove it.
They should have been rolling.
Yeah. As Jason, who has guested on the show many times, as soon as you walk in the door, you should be rolling.
Yeah.
So same situation with that.
Bruce's first job on a set as an assistant director was for the Magic Balloon, where it was a guy that was trying to move from advertising into filmmaking, and there was a aerial balloon, like an air balloon scene, and they were towing it behind a truck, and they like completely messed up the rig, and the balloon like crashed into the trees, and it was like terrible. But my favorite part of that whole story is that the director's like, don't stop rolling.
Nice.
Now that's an artist right there.
Some of the best footage. His partner was in the thing because the lead actress wouldn't do the shot because it was so terrifying. So he got his lady to do it. So it's his lady in the balloon crashing into the trees, and he's like, "Don't stop rolling."
Oh my God.
Fantastic.
Hopefully she forgives me later. She understands you have to sacrifice for art. Oh God. So I mean, just sort of a question I just thought of is if there was anything that you could take with today's technology and insert it into Evil Dead back in, 81. Is there one thing that you could think of that would enhance the movie?
No.
You leave it untouched.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I just love, this was like what we talked about with The Thing. I love the practical effects.
Yeah.
And I really would like to go back to that point.
Likewise. Yeah.
And it's important because, like we talked about, the inspiration of the concept that you can make an indie film. Like, that's how you can do it.
Yeah.
And computers, sure, but some of that stuff's like really expensive for the software. And all
Yeah.
that. Dude, if you can just get a camera and do tricks with the camera, like, no, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change a thing.
It's one of the easiest, which doesn't mean easy, but one of the easiest means of breaking into that industry, just because, if you make an action film, it's going to be millions of dollars. If you make a drama film, the return isn't necessarily going to be there. But if you can make a horror film with a shoestring budget, it can pay off.
Yeah.
And this is a rare example, but I mean, just look at a new genre came about from Blair Witch. And it was like $20,000 to make that movie, and they're all on an island probably somewhere with supermodels now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, then you ended up having, Paranormal Activity come shortly after that.
Yep.
And
Spawned a million mimics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think horror is one of the most forgiving of the genres when it comes to new filmmakers.
Which
Because it has to be
nobody-
scary.
Nobody figures that out without the Evil Dead. It was early enough where
Yep.
it was them sitting down and going, "Oh, well, horror movies don't cost that much," and then everybody looking at Evil Dead and going, "Oh, we can do that too."
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
We have 2x4s.
Yeah.
exactly.
It was the catalyst for the next several generations of horror filmmaking, and I think comedy as well, because like we've talked about, there's a lot of comedic elements, even if they weren't purposefully put
Right.
there, So yeah,
I
I
still haven't seen Evil Dead 2, so
Yeah.
Anyway.
yeah, I've just seen the bits and pieces of it, but I need to watch the whole thing. What's your all's favorite scenes? James, let's start with you.
In the first film, you mean?
Yes.
Definitely, because it's so flipping claustrophobic, would be the cellar scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like when oof. Oh man. Yeah.
Nothing about it.
It's like the scene in The Shining with the old lady, except meets The Exorcist. It's basically the old lady's possessed. It's terrifying. Oof.
Yeah.
Rough.
Gareth.
Same answer.
Yeah,
Also, interestingly enough,
Yes.
edited by Joel Cohen.
Ah,
Weird.
So.
That was his biggest contribution. He was the editing assistant, but he did the entire cellar scene, and it was done as 2 long pieces. And the way he pieced them together was specifically referenced by like everyone involved. That like, oh crap, dude, you should maybe make movies.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah, the cellar stuff creeped me out
Yeah.
a lot. So that would, I think, be my answer as
yeah.
well.
Cabins are just inherently claustrophobic, and just adding that to it, like that's not enough. No, there's a little underground part of this where you can't get out.
Yeah. Nope, I don't like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't like that. The budget on this, like we mentioned, was about 350 to 375. That was a lot of borrowing, begging, loans, collateral on parents' houses, all of that good stuff. Was there any more that you wanted to add that we hadn't discussed before, Gareth?
When they left Tennessee, they were broke, 100% broke. We'd already shared the anecdote about the blow up that took the leverage of his dad's property, and then it was Irvin Shapiro is basically the person who figured out distribution, because they took it to Cannes and it was really well received, and then it took a New Line Cinema to pick it up in America, which doesn't happen without them being at Cannes and being distributed in Europe. It was actually in 1983. It was actually the best-selling film in England.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. The UK loved
really,
it.
really weird. And it's that made New Line pick it up.
Yeah.
And then they distributed it in America, which they made a good chunk of change. But it really wasn't until later on with at the time VHS sales.
Yeah.
I'd mentioned that the investors got their money back after 6 years, although it was supposed to be 2.
Sure.
And 19 years later, in 1993, they were the 3rd in video sales again,
Weird.
behind Titanic. And do you guys want to guess what the other one is?
Well, Avatar wasn't out at that time, so that's not it.
1993.
1993.
I can give you a clue.
It wasn't-
Disney.
Oh, was it Disney? I was going to say, like, I think Jurassic
Little
Park was
Mermaid.
96.
Go on.
Mermaid.
Not Little Mermaid.
Oh, The Lion King.
Fantasia.
Lady and the Tramp.
Really?
It was 93.
93.
That feels so much older.
But for the video sales.
Yeah.
Oh,
for the
yeah,
video
okay, I
sales.
got
They
it
were
now.
3rd in video
Interesting.
sales behind Titanic and Lady and the
Trippy.
Tramp.
Weird.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, I something else that went along with, and I don't know if like maybe this helped spur the numbers or not, but you mentioned like the UK, it was one of like the biggest selling ones there. It like, pretty much garnered this title of the nasty, like the nasty movie, and was like rated X. And so it was like because of sadism, it was, then
That'll
banned
do it.
in this country.
Want
And
people to
yeah,
watch something, tell them they can't. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
That's a big thing for. I mean, this is kind of a like divergent point, but like Simon Pegg, in the UK, they really did ban a lot of that stuff, and so the dude who made Shaun of the Dead couldn't see even the early Romero stuff, but it made it this like fascinating
Forbidden
thing.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one. You don't have Shaun of the Dead
Right.
without Evil Dead.
Right.
Like,
Makes
guys that
sense.
are just shooting off on their own.
Yeah.
A little more effective.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just really interesting to be able to look at it and see how much it's impacted film industry and just, I think, the way of people creating.
Absolutely.
I think it gave a lot of hope to people who were in their 20s and people who, maybe just were like, this just is not attainable. But actually, they made it to where it was. You just got to be really, really creative and understand you may be broke.
I'm sure it's maybe a double-edged sword, and that I bet there's a handful of really terrible movies that have been made because of the Evil Dead.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, in that I think that maybe the people who made those movies were either fulfilled in some way or realized that they shouldn't start a film career.
Exactly. And with everything good comes a little bad too.
Yeah.
So, it's just the balance of the universe. And unfortunately, we have to endure it sometimes.
Absolutely.
But speaking of good things, why don't we go into our Oscar Mayer Wiener Award? It's award time, guys. Gareth, who, what element are you giving an award to in this movie?
It's the production. It's the grassroots indie style production. I love Bruce Campbell. I love his performance. I love Sam Raimi. I love his tenacity. But I truly think that it's the ability to make something out of almost literally nothing. It's the production. And it's not that Sam and Bruce didn't have parts in all of that. It's just that it's the creativity that came to pull off some of the practical effects and the shots and all of that stuff. And I guess to make it entirely too broad, the ability to create something from nothing just because you're passionate about something is really, really, I think, the Oscar Mayer Wiener Awards.
Yes. Yeah, and I actually that's mine as well. I think it's the whole being able to work as a team, because if every single person that worked on that, if one of them was missing, it probably would have been a different project.
Yeah,
they all were integral in creating this, and this makes me want to go make a movie.
It's Stone Soup the movie. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah. What about you, James?
Well, I was gonna go with practical effects, so now I gotta give it to Bruce Campbell then.
Yeah.
Because one, he did a great job. Two, he's the face of the entire franchise as a result. And three, he's one of the few people outside of Hong Kong willing to break bones and lose teeth for his role. So,
Yeah. There were so many injuries on this movie. So many.
And barely fix any of it.
Yeah. So I think those are both two great answers. I mean, as a whole, initially, like I had mentioned, I didn't appreciate this movie as much prior to knowing all of this and like right after watching it, then going through and doing the research, because I didn't want to ruin any of it, even though it's a movie that's older than I am. It's like I hadn't seen it yet. So, but yeah, like just hearing the story, being someone who studied film, knowing how hard it is being on film sets, that was a lot of work.
Yeah. Middle of nowhere, 60-page script, wood planks and cameras. It's bananas.
In Tennessee.
Inaccessible during the winter.
Yeah.
No insulation. No plumbing.
And I think the actress that played Cheryl, she said it was like 40 degrees, if not below, while she's running out in the woods before the
They had 0-degree shoots where they had the cameras would freeze, and they had to set the cameers next to a fire to warm them up.
Not a problematic thing. What's wrong with that? So, that was one thing I remember like hearing in a couple of the things I was watching where I was like, oh my God. But it makes sense, and that's why they started burning stuff, because they had to in order to stay warm enough to survive. So, well, let's now, I think something also that will be award winning is our martini shots. James. Okay, so martini shots with James, one of my favorite parts of the show. So what do you have for us, James?
This is a reference to the third installment of the series, But one of my favorite lines from the whole series is when he shouts, "This is my boomstick."
Yes.
And I thought it would be fun to make a cocktail inspired by that idea, like a boomstick cocktail. So this is the boomstick. It is a riff on the Corpse Survivor #2 and the Painkiller, which are two very good drinks. Painkiller and Corpse Survivor 2 obviously have kind of clear allusions between the undead and getting shot. So that's another reason behind it. But what you want to do is you want to take, and this is to taste, pineapple juice. Now, for me personally, I like it a little drier. I'm not a big fan of very sweet drinks. So I go with 3 ounces of pineapple juice. And then to that, I add 1.5 ounces of white rum. And to that, I also add a 1/4 ounce. This is the real unique thing about it that neither of those cocktails have. A 1/4 ounce orange liqueur. Preferably a drier one, Cointreau, triple sec, what have you. Preferably one that actually has alcohol and not the little store bottles. But either way, a 1/4 ounce of orange liqueur. You're going to want to stir that with ice in an old-fashioned glass. And you're going to want to top it off with a bar spoon of absinthe. So it's going to be yellow and relatively sweet and a little citrusy with a very intense green bitter first taste.
Wow. Okay. So the boomstick.
Boomstick.
Well, that sounds. I'll try it. I'll try it.
Good deal.
You know? Yeah. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe it'll be award-winning, James.
Yeah. Good deal.
Yeah.
It can even be made into a tiki bowl if you want, and if you want to float desiccated orange slices on top, maybe add a little more absinthe on, like a sugar cube floating on it. Then you can kind of have the theatrics where like it's on fire.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, like, it'd be fun to have, because in this movie, there's the part where we're sort of going through like the marshy area and there's a little bit of like this fog rolling. And I'm like, man, wouldn't it be fun to have sort of like fog rolling or some kind of like smoke or something? Fire gets us close.
There we go.
I'll take it. And let's move over to now our sweet endings. This is the part of the show where everyone says what their favorite quote is. James, start with you.
Can't remember exactly how he says it, but at the end of the recording, like the last line is he says something to the effect, the professor, of the only way to contend with the undead is through dismemberment or something like that. And again, when I first watched the movie, it really, that's what strapped me in, where I was like, okay, now I know what I'm in for. Now I know what to expect, and you're still shocked.
Gareth.
So, for a series that is so quotable,
Except for the first one.
except for the first one, I thought about this long and hard, and I did my research. My favorite part is the fact that he is referred to as Ashley.
Yes.
For the only time in all of the movies. When Cheryl's dancing around in the, come on, Ashley.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah.
And so I decided that would be my favorite quote. Did you know that what was assigned as his middle name?
It starts with a J, right?
It was Ashley J for a long time until Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Ashley
Joanna.
Oh no.
I was hoping it was Judd. Yeah.
I was gonna reference just like something random, be like Jefferson, Ashley Jefferson.
So Sam
Ashley
Raimi,
Joanna.
Sam Raimi wanted to do Ash because he felt like, that's and it was Campbell that was like, it should be Ashley.
And honestly, I like that better, because initially I thought it might be short for Asher, but I like Ashley more.
Yeah, it's Ashley Joanna.
That's amazing.
So that was my pick.
That's excellent. My favorite quote is Scotty when he's like, "This kind of looks like your old girlfriend." And
That's a good one too. The first one's hard because there's so groovy.
Yeah.
Hail to the king, baby.
It's no boomstick. Yeah, there's so many from the others.
So I wanted to make you guys really like work. You guys know so much about this movie.
Honestly, the hardest I worked.
So, yes. Well, good. I'm glad that, you all were able to talk about this wealth of knowledge when it comes to this topic. And once again, James, just go ahead and let people know where they can listen to the 13th Floor podcast.
We're on anywhere you listen to music, Spotify, Apple, etc., and also the 13th Floor podcast.com.
And Facebook page.
Yeah, that too.
And Instagram.
And
Is there a TikTok?
No, not TikTok. Oops.
No, you have a TikTok.
Yeah,
but
I got a TikTok.
if you're interested in spiders, check out James's TikTok. And Gareth.
You can check me out as being Gareth Evans at being Gareth Evans. But if you'd like to check out my music festival, it is Tahlsound, Tahlsound, and that's at tahlsound.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram and the whole 9 yards.
Well, guys, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you to Ned for our music. And if you'd like to check us out, you can do so this way.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at FRM Podcast and email us at frmfan@gmail.com.
Dude, Sam Raimi's
He's a little sadist.
Sadistic little dude. But yeah, he does sure love beating up on Bruce.
Yeah.
A lot of injuries.